When most people imagine billionaire wealth, they picture something simple: massive bank accounts, vaults filled with cash, or maybe a secret Swiss account quietly holding billions. But the reality is far more interesting because when wealth reaches the level of billions, money stops behaving like money. It becomes something else entirely: a system, a global network designed not just to store wealth, but to protect it, multiply it, and move it across the world with extraordinary precision. Take institutions like UBS or JPMorgan Chase. These aren't just banks in the traditional sense. For the ultra-rich, they operate more like financial command centers, places where billionaires quietly coordinate investments across continents, currencies, and entire industries. Behind glass towers and discreet private offices, teams of specialists manage fortunes that most people will never fully see. But here's where things become even more fascinating. For many billionaires, the bank is only the beginning, because the truly wealthy rarely store their fortunes in a single place. Instead, their wealth spreads across a carefully designed ecosystem: luxury real estate in global cities, private equity investments, rare art collections worth hundreds of millions, yachts, vineyards, and ultra-exclusive assets that quietly grow in value over time. And then there are family offices, private financial organizations created to manage the wealth of a single billionaire dynasty. These entities operate almost like miniature investment banks, except their only mission is to protect and grow one family's fortune for generations. So the real question isn't how much money billionaires have. The real question is, where is that wealth actually stored? Because once you begin to look behind the scenes of global wealth management, you realize something surprising. The richest people on Earth don't just store their money, they engineer entire systems around it. For most people, a bank is a place you visit. For billionaires, it's a place you enter privately. Hidden inside the headquarters of institutions like UBS and JPMorgan Chase are floors the public rarely sees. These aren't normal banking halls. They look more like luxury executive lounges, private elevators open into quiet corridors. Conference rooms overlook financial districts. And instead of tellers behind counters, clients meet with teams of investment strategists, economists, and portfolio architects. Because for the ultra-wealthy, banking is no longer about saving money. It's about orchestrating capital. A billionaire might have assets spread across multiple continents: real estate in New York City, investment funds operating in London, and long-term portfolios structured through financial centers like Zurich. Private banking teams coordinate all of it. One advisor might manage global equity exposure. Another monitors currency movements. A third focuses entirely on alternative investments like infrastructure, venture capital, or rare assets. To the outside world, it looks simple. A billionaire has money in a bank, but behind the scenes, wealth is moving constantly, invested into companies, allocated into global markets, positioned in assets designed to grow quietly over decades. And for the wealthiest clients, these banks offer something even more valuable than investment strategy: access. Access to private deals, access to exclusive funds, access to investment opportunities that rarely appear on public markets. But even these elite banking services are only one layer of the system, because the richest families in the world eventually decide something important. Instead of relying entirely on banks, they begin building their own financial empires. At a certain level of wealth, even private banking starts to feel limited. Because when fortunes grow into the tens of billions, the question changes. It's no longer just about where to store money, it's about who controls the strategy. That's why many of the world's richest families eventually create something called a family office. And despite the modest name, a family office can look more like a private financial empire. Instead of relying entirely on outside institutions, billionaires build their own teams of analysts, investment managers, tax specialists, and legal advisors, all working under one roof. Their mission is simple: protect the family's wealth, grow it strategically, and make sure it lasts for generations. Today, some of the most powerful fortunes in the world are managed through family offices. For example, the investment operations linked to Jeff Bezos oversee a vast portfolio of private companies, real estate projects, and technology investments. Similarly, the empire surrounding Bernard Arnault quietly manages stakes across luxury brands, global markets, and cultural assets that shape the luxury industry itself. These offices operate far away from the spotlight. No trading floors, no public announcements, Just quiet strategy meetings in private offices overlooking cities like New York City, London, and Singapore. Inside these rooms, teams decide how billions of dollars should move over the next decade. Which industries deserve investment, which markets offer long term opportunity, and which assets will preserve wealth for the next generation of the family. But even family offices don't operate in isolation because billionaire wealth rarely stays in one country. Instead, it flows across a global network of financial capitals, cities specifically designed to attract and protect extreme wealth. Once wealth reaches a certain scale, geography starts to matter. Not just where someone lives, but where their money lives, because billionaires rarely keep their assets tied to a single country. Instead, their wealth moves through a carefully selected network of global financial centers, cities designed to attract, manage, and protect capital. Places like Zurich, where private banking has quietly operated for generations, or Singapore, a city that has rapidly become one of the world's most important centers for wealth management and family offices. And of course, New York City, where some of the world's largest investment firms and capital markets operate around the clock. For billionaires, these cities function like nodes in a global financial network. Money flows between them constantly. Investments in technology might originate in Silicon Valley. Luxury real estate portfolios may expand through London or New York. Long-term capital might be structured through institutions in Switzerland or Asia. Behind the scenes, institutions like UBS and JPMorgan Chase coordinate these movements, advising ultra-wealthy clients on how to position assets across currencies, markets, and regions. The goal isn't simply growth, it's resilience. Because spreading wealth across different markets protects fortunes from economic shocks, political instability, and market cycles. In other words, billionaire wealth is rarely concentrated in one place. It's diversified across continents. But even this global strategy tells only part of the story, because some of the most valuable assets in a billionaire's portfolio don't sit inside financial accounts at all. They exist in a different world entirely, a world where luxury and investment quietly intersect. At first glance, many billionaire purchases look like pure indulgence. A $200 million penthouse, a rare painting sold at auction, a classic sports car that spends most of its life inside a climate-controlled garage. But in the world of extreme wealth, luxury often serves another purpose. It becomes an asset. Take the global art market, where collectors quietly acquire works from artists like Pablo Picasso or Jean-Michel Basquiat. Paintings that once sold for thousands can later appear at auctions for tens, sometimes hundreds, of millions of dollars. For wealthy collectors, art is not just cultural expression. It's a store of value. A similar pattern appears in the world of rare automobiles. Models like the legendary Ferrari 250 GTO have sold for more than $50 million, making them some of the most valuable cars ever created. These vehicles are rarely driven. Instead, they're preserved like rolling pieces of financial history. Then there's luxury real estate, perhaps the most visible layer of billionaire wealth. Penthouses overlooking New York City, waterfront estates in Monaco, and ultra-modern villas rising along the skyline of Dubai. These properties aren't simply homes. They're positioned as long-term investments tied to some of the most desirable locations on Earth. Even yachts, symbols of extravagant lifestyle, sometimes function as mobile assets within a billionaire's portfolio. Because at the highest levels of wealth, luxury and finance begin to merge. The penthouse isn't just a residence. The artwork isn't just decoration. The classic car isn't just a machine. They're all part of the same system. A system designed to preserve wealth across decades, sometimes centuries. And when you step back and look at the entire structure, something remarkable becomes clear. For billionaires, money itself is only the starting point. When you step back and look at the full picture, billionaire wealth begins to look less like a fortune and more like an architecture, a carefully engineered structure built to last far beyond a single lifetime. At the center of that structure are financial institutions like UBS and JPMorgan Chase, where private banking teams quietly coordinate investments across global markets. Surrounding that core are family offices, operating almost like private investment headquarters, analyzing opportunities, allocating capital, and managing fortunes that stretch across industries and continents. Then comes the global layer. Assets positioned across cities like Singapore, Zurich, and New York City each location playing a different role in the global flow of capital. And beyond the financial world lies something more tangible: luxury assets. Iconic penthouses overlooking city skylines, rare artworks hanging in private collections, classic cars like the legendary Ferrari 250 GTO preserved as cultural and financial treasures. Individually, these pieces might look like symbols of extravagance, but together they form something far more strategic: a diversified system designed to protect wealth through market cycles, political shifts, and generational change. Because for billionaires, the ultimate goal is rarely just accumulation. It's preservation, ensuring that the fortune built today continues to grow, quietly and strategically, for decades to come. And perhaps that's the most fascinating part of extreme wealth. From the outside, it often looks like luxury. But behind the scenes, it's a system of power, patience, and long-term vision. If you enjoy exploring the systems behind global wealth and luxury, subscribe for more deep dives into the worlds where money, influence, and lifestyle quietly intersect.